infected. That's why they hate it. Now, when you do whole lockdowns, it's 1,000 people a day to stop one transmission. So that's why people don't like that either. So what we've got to do, in my view, is move to a setting where, in fact, that ratio is much improved. So if you're quarantining people who've got symptoms and have a positive PCR, then you only have to quarantine them you only have to have 5 of those people quarantined for a day to stop one transmission. That's massively effective.
Next up was Baroness Dido Harding, the boss of Test and Trace. She was also asked why contact tracing had fallen below 60% in recent weeks. And again, she was pressed on whether Boris Johnson's assertion that people not following the rules was to blame. She told MPs that one of the reasons that people were not self-isolating when asked to do so was because they could not afford it.
I do agree with Professor Harrison that all the evidence shows that people are not complying with isolation, not because they don't want to, but because they find it very difficult. And the need to keep earning and to be able to feed your family is a fundamental element of that, which is why I think that the financial support payment is a very good thing. So I agree with the underlying driver. As to the actual sum of money, that is not for NHS Test and Trace. That is a decision for the government, for the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, and not one for me.
Now, as Baroness Harding said, there is some support available. £500 is provided to those people who are in receipt of benefits in England in order to so that they can afford to self-isolate. That accounts for around 4 million people, but of course if you're not in receipt of benefits, then you're not entitled to that financial support.
So, I mean, Dido Harding possibly might have been expected to provide more substantive testimony to the Select Committee, or am I being unfair? I mean, the questions of why we're back...
She was batting it back.
Right.
She was batting it back.
Quite a lot of her answers involved saying that she didn't know at this point. Is that right?
Yes. And she didn't know the answer to a number of questions. But what she didn't want to do was to appear to take blame for the fact that, as I said, contact tracing is now below 60% in some cases. We've discussed it on your programme, James, when the results come out weekly and the number of tests may have gone up, but Test and Trace, the NHS has had to admit that they have only been able to find 6 in 10 contacts of those provided by people who have tested positive for COVID.
John, breath of fresh air he is, and I love GP, very, very clever people who retain a degree of irreverence are probably my favourite kind of people, but he makes a powerful point even in the context of that Select Committee, doesn't he, that the people responsible for everything that's happened thus far are going to be the people responsible for getting the vaccine into the arms of Britain.
Yes, you're right to point out, and Professor Sir John Bell was putting a huge caveat on that, saying, well, as long as they don't screw it up, and the inference is from what he was saying that there is something that you can screw up about this, and he was honest when he said that actually you have to store this vaccine at minus 80 degrees in order to keep it effective, and if that doesn't happen, then you are left with a vaccine that's ineffective. And the question has to be, given what we've seen so far with the testing programme, is can the government, when it gets hold of these 40 million vials of the vaccine, which are capable, which is pre-ordered, which is capable of
logistics, infrastructure, transport,
people,
all of
can they get it out there?
Wait and see, fingers crossed. Just because they messed everything up yesterday doesn't mean they have to mess it up tomorrow. If you're just tuning into this vaccine that Theo's talking about, it's the vaccine that is the best chance yet of seeing off the COVID-19 catastrophe, produced in Belgium, developed by a company founded by the German children of Turkish immigrants, and it will have to be approved, of course, by the European Medicines Agency that has just relocated from London to Amsterdam because of Brexit. Tim Humphrey has the headlines.
The Welsh Government has announced it's scrapping all GCSE, AS and A-level exams next year because of coronavirus. Instead, it says it will introduce teacher-managed assessments. An inquiry has found the Catholic Church in England and Wales put its reputation ahead of protecting children from sexual abuse. It also accuses its most senior leader, Cardinal Nichols, of failing to lead by example or showing compassion for victims. The Health Secretary says the NHS will mount a colossal effort to roll out a COVID-19 vaccine once it's been approved by regulators. Matt Hancock says health workers are on standby to start delivering the jab at the start of next month, He's warned there are still many hurdles to overcome. He also says children won't need to have the vaccine and it will be voluntary for adults. The weather becoming brighter everywhere this afternoon, with a few scattered showers, becoming windy in the northwest and a high of 15.
This is LBC.
My hearing aids are rechargeable and have Bluetooth, and they're tiny. My monthly payments, I mean.
I thought my hearing aids were small, but then I saw my monthly payments.
With Boots Hearing Care, you can spread the cost of your new hearing aids interest-free over 2 years, so your monthly payments will feel just as small and comfortable. Turn up the things you love with Boots Hearing Care. Let's feel good. Subject to status. Over 18s. T's and C's apply. Minimum deposit required. Premium hearing aids. Hearing care stores only.
For the latest travel news, go to lbc.co.uk. Hey, Ria. What's it like being the boss?
So many decisions to make, Kev.
Like whether to switch to EE's business full works plan for iPhone?
That was an easy one. I mean, the unlimited data's a must-have. And I get to watch Apple TV Plus when it's time to unwind.
I bet you love bopping along to Apple Music, too.
I've got some moves.
Oh, yeah? Like this, you mean?
Not on work time, Kev.
Get EE's business full works plan for iPhone or get Plan Envy.
T's and C's apply. Check coverage at e.co.uk/coverage. Experience may vary by location.
Euronics is the home of electricals, where you'll find great brands, great local service and always great value. We're proud to be local and serving our local communities. Whether you prefer to shop online or safely back in over 600 local stores, we're here to help you discover your next great home appliance. From ovens to dishwashers, TVs to floor care, or something in between. Whatever you need, your local independent electrical retailer is always here to help. Find yours or shop online at euronics.co.uk.
The big Co-op price cut is here. We're lowering prices on hundreds of products across our stores. From Co-op 145-gram tuna chunks in brine, down from £1.10 to 85p. To Co-op 500-gram fusilli pasta twists, down from 66p to 58p. And Co-op 500-gram tomato and garlic pasta sauce, down from 85p to 70p. Look out for the big Co-op price cut in your local store now. Co-op is what we do. Selected products subject to availability.
Vic's Plastering, Sandra's Baking, Ivan's Electrics, Matt's Florist, Case Construction, Mary's Lawns, Mohammed's IT Solutions. Jims, Janes and Jacks of all trades have climbed the ladder. It's time to enjoy the view. The new limited edition Ford Ranger Thunder, award-winning workhorse capabilities of the Ranger with a styling like no other. Black mesh grille and side steps, unique 18-inch alloy wheels, 3D Thunder badging. Looks like business is looking good. We're with you on this journey. Ford Commercial Vehicles, backbone of Britain. Visit Ford.co.uk.
The only 'cause it's Friday food. The impulse saw it in the queue and thought of you. The midweek treats. Debit MasterCard is the safe and easy way to pay online, in-store or on the move. For the little things that make every day priceless. Debit MasterCard. Learn more at mastercard.co.uk.
At Morrison's, we want to thank the nation's school teachers by offering a 10% discount in store. And we're continuing to offer our very hard-working NHS workers a 10% discount. Thank you. From Morrison's. Majority of stores, a valid photo ID required. For terms and conditions, see my.morrisons.com/discounts.
When was the last time somebody bought something from your website? In fact, if you didn't have to pay money to search engines, would you be able to sell anything at all? With Golgi, you don't even need a website to sell your stuff online. Just go to golgi.com, add your name and product list, and start selling. Simple, right? The best part, Golgi doesn't take upfront fees or commission. It's all about you and your customers. So why make selling online complicated? Let Golgi do the hard work for you. Want to sell? Golgi.
That's GOLLGI.com.
James O'Brien on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
12:35 is the time. Grim but necessary reading for fellow Catholics in particular, but for anybody who cares about child sex abuse in any form today, as the independent inquiry into child sex abuse reports upon the Roman Catholic Church's response to allegations of abuse. John O'Brien, no relation, is the secretary of that independent inquiry into child. You could just set it up for us, really. Focus upon the Catholic Church come from, and what was this element of the inquiry designed to achieve?
Thanks, James. Nice to speak to you. Well, as you know, this is the last of the panel's report into different parts of the institution of the Roman Catholics. In England, we've done Ampleforth and Downside, as you know. We've done Ealing Abbey, we've done the Archdiocese of Birmingham, and this is the last report that really focuses on leadership in the church, the way the church overall dealt with allegations of abuse, and where we are now, I guess. And I think the main headlines for me are that this is an example where the church clearly prioritised for many years its reputation over the protection and well-being of children, where sexual abuse, when it was reported, wasn't dealt with in the way that I think you and I would expect it to be dealt with. We've got examples of priests being moved around from parish to parish, no formal internal investigations and no reports of abuse in instances to the appropriate outside authorities.
So without being too niche, because obviously most people won't have read any of or much of what's been published so far, are we seeing on a nationwide scale the same sort of conduct that we saw on a specific scale with reference to the Benedictine communities at Ampleforth, full disclosure, my old school, and Downside and Ealing Abbey, because those, and St Benedict's as well, those two tactics you described there were writ large in that element of the report, weren't they?
Yeah, so, I mean, this report talks about a similar case in Birmingham in the 1970s where allegations were made, but the priest concerned was moved to different parishes and no report was made to outside authorities. And by the figures themselves, I mean, between 1970 and 2015 there were 900 complaints involving more than 3,000 instances of child sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. And if we move forward from then, since 2016 there's been more than 100 reported allegations each year. So that's, you know, many hundreds of allegations even since 2016. And as I say, the overarching findings of the panel, I think, is that the reputation of the church was prioritised in many instances above the protection of children. And if I could just turn for a moment to two things that I just think specifically demonstrate that. One is that when Cardinal Vincent gave evidence to the inquiry, he spoke about the need for the church to move forward and really get a grip on this, but the panel found that he didn't really display any recognition that he personally, as the senior Roman Catholic in England or Wales, had any responsibility taking that forward, and they didn't find that he displayed much empathy for victims either.
Really?
So
that's going to be very grim reading.
Indeed. And then one of the things the panel were particularly keen to get was evidence from the nuncio, which is the representative of the Holy See in the UK, specifically relating to Ealing Abbey, which is one of the investigations that we did earlier. And despite several months of requesting that and correspondence with the nuncio, in the end the nuncio confirmed that he wouldn't be providing a statement to the inquiry. And that was in 2018-2019. So a very recent example where the panel were really disappointed that the church demonstrating that it really did want to help with this, failing to deliver. And it just seemed to be at odds with the statements, the very strong statements from the Pope in 2019 that the church needed to get on top of this, that we then in the same year got the nuncio deciding not to provide a statement to us.
Yes. Where does the buck go next, John? Is there a prospect of justice? Some of the testimony is unbearable to read, genuinely unbearable, particularly priests threatening their victims with their sisters losing places at local convent schools if he didn't continue to stay quiet about the abuse. Do some of the people that have given evidence to the inquiry have any hope of seeing their abusers punished?
So, I mean, clearly what we as an inquiry can do is check and presenting the evidence.
That's not a fair question, is it? What do we think?
So, I mean, clearly the panel have set out quite clearly what they found, which is, as I've said, a prioritisation of the reputation of the church over, and as the panel point out quite early on in this report, religious organisations are different from other organisations in that they have a specific moral duty that perhaps other organisations don't have in the same way. So when a church lets somebody down in this way, for victims it often feels like the worst possible portrayal, because it's the one place that they felt safe initially.
And it adds to the abuse, of course, because as we've discovered many times on this programme, people are told that by their abusers that they will not be believed, and in the case of priests that insistence is even more powerful than it is with non-clerical abusers.
It is, and the panel found that does two things really. It means that those who are already victims of this dreadful abuse don't get the support and care they need from the church, and that those that might be thinking of reporting their abuse are discouraged from doing so when they see the reaction of others that report it. So, you know, it is a significant issue, isn't it, that an organisation that doesn't get on top of abuse in this way not only allows that abuse to continue, but in many instances, but also in many other instances, it means that people don't report it in the first place.
Because they have been persuaded that they will not be believed. John O'Brien, Secretary of the Independent Inquiry into child sexual abuse, thank you very much indeed. Jonathan West is a child protection campaigner. He was he brought to the public attention the abuse scandal at Ealing Abbey and St Benedict's School, which is looked at specifically in today's report and in the previous one, as John just explained, a culture of abuse spanning decades involving the most senior members of staff. Not pleasant reading for you, Jonathan. Did anything jump out?
I think what jumped out particularly was Cardinal Nichols' complete failure of leadership, and the report actually specifically says that he didn't demonstrate compassion towards victims when he, in the recent cases, when he was questioned by the inquiry. But that failure of leadership goes right up to the Vatican. I think the failure of them to cooperate with the inquiry is really quite shocking. I have a particular connection with that, in that it was me who actually requested through the papal nuncio that the Vatican hold an inquiry into Ealing, what they call an apostolic visitation. So I'm really very, very disappointed that they didn't cooperate in saying what their considerations were about all of that.
So even having failed to do the apostolic visitation, they wouldn't even provide an explanation for their decision not to do the apostolic visitation.
They did do the apostolic. They did do the visitation, but it was designed essentially to achieve nothing.
So a box-ticking exercise.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not just historical, as James O'Brien. John O'Brien. Said there have been 100 cases a year since 2016. And I think this is very difficult for the church, because Anglican, they like to think of themselves as the good guys.
Yes.
And in this context, clearly it isn't true.
It is, yes, because it is I think it's very difficult for both of us, this, I suspect, for obvious reasons, but it is the case that the people in charge covered up for and excused the people responsible for the abuse. So the chain of culpability, as you just explained, goes all the way to the Holy See, which for anybody raised a Catholic is an almost indigestible truth.
Yeah. I mean, it goes all the way from individual bishops and abbots all the way up to the Holy See. I mean, this is something that most non-Catholics might not understand.
Yeah.
But the sense of horror that one might feel, knowing that someone who hands you the host at Mass has either been an abuser or been an enabler of abuse.
Enabler is the word, isn't it? Because it's as if it reaches into everybody's reputation and conduct. Quite rightly, you can't not do as much as humanly possible, and we would expect, perhaps naively, priests and bishops and abbots and even popes and certainly nuncios to do even more than quotes ordinary end quotes individuals. I'll ask you the same question I asked John, if I may, Jonathan, which is, does this start a process of prosecution or punishment or inquiry, or do we see the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse as an end in itself?
Well, I think there's a very important thing that the inquiry has not yet made a recommendation on, which is concerning mandatory reporting.
Yes.
At the moment, the current state of both civil law and the Church's own canon law is that a bishop could actually witness a priest raping an altar boy in the vestry, and if he chose not to report it, there's absolutely nothing under either set of law that either the Church or the state could do about it.
And I know you work with my friend Tom Perry at Mandate Now, which is an organisation designed specifically to address this anomaly and to make it an offence not to report immediately events such as the ones you've just described. If you were in a position even of relatively junior authority, if you were to witness them, what are the odds, do you think, Jonathan, on the inquiry making a recommendation in that field, the sort that you and your colleagues at Mandate Now would like to see?
It's hard to tell. The inquiry are keeping their cards close to their chest. Mandatory reporting has been mentioned in this report as something that they're going to address in their final report, which I believe will be coming out in a year or two.
Yes.
But I do really think that it's utterly necessary, and in fact 80% of countries in the world already have it.
Yes, I know. I mean, it is one of those astonishing sort of areas in which we seem, for reasons that elude me, to be lagging behind much of the world. Jonathan, thank you. Before you go, is there anything else you wanted to add? I'm a little late for the break, but this is more important.
I think that the Church has also sort of shown itself to be absolutely opposed to resolving the conflict between reporting abuse and the confessional. They're saying absolutely the seal of confessional is absolute. We cannot do anything about it, even if a priest admits abuse.
Incredible, isn't it?
Now,
but the way we were raised, that is simultaneously shocking and unshocking, right?
the Church's own procedures, which unfortunately are not so enforceable, says that what a confessor should do is say, well, okay, you've got to repeat this outside the confessional in order to receive absolution.
Yes.
But I don't know of a single instance where a priest has voluntarily gone to the authorities to say, I've abused. So either no priest ever admits abuse, or that policy isn't followed.
And of course, if they do admit it in the confessional, they've received no absolution, technically. I mean, a doctrinal point. But again, perhaps for non-Catholics, that's a bit too nuanced. Final question, does it put Cardinal Vincent Nichols' position in any jeopardy, do you think?
I can't see how, with any integrity, he can remain balanced.
But what do you think?
There are news stories that he offered his resignation and has been asked to carry on by the Pope.
We shall watch this space with interest. Jonathan, thank you for your help in understanding the sheer scale of this. 12:49 is the time. Utterly disgusting and heartbreaking. And some of these victims are my friends. That's why I tend to approach this story in a slightly different fashion from some others. I'll just read you one thing, because you know I say to you that some people hear what they want to hear on this programme, and I think it's important to stress that this happens on any subject, not just on the kind of Brexity type stuff. So here's a tweet that just came in during the conversation you were listening to. Catholic O'Brien tiptoeing around the Catholic Church abuse, shameful hypocrisy, better at smearing Corbyn. That is a human being who just heard what you heard. They walk among us.
Coming up at 1 on LBC, Sheila Fogarty.
The Health Secretary and the head of Track and Trace are both speaking today, just one day since news of a vaccine emerged. Are you feeling more positive?
Sheila Fogarty on LBC.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is £44 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online on the app. Estimated to jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Busted boiler on a freezing day. Typical. Now we're spending more time at home. So before that happens, get a quote from British Gas on a new one. Spread the cost interest-free over 2 years and get £150 off or £350 off if you're an existing Homegate customer. And of course, we follow social distancing guidelines. Offer ends 30th of November. British Gas, here to solve. Search British Gas new boiler. Conditions apply. British Gas New Heating Limited is a credit broker and uses a panel of lenders.
I've been in the home all day. I've been working from home and had to pop out to go and collect the children from school. And during that time, we'd been burgled, so in broad daylight.
I think it really hits home when you come into your children's bedrooms and you see the children's bedrooms have been turned upside down.
So the break-in was a real wake-up call in terms of having to do something about the security of the house. So we did a complete review. The first product I bought was the Ring floodlight cam, and that was purely because I had an existing floodlight on the front of the house. Because the Ring floodlight cam was at one side of the house, the Ring doorbell is at the other, it gives us that total coverage across the front of the property. With the Ring system, I get a notification if someone is on the property. So as long as my phone stays quiet, I know there's no one on the property. And having that level of reassurance all the time is worth its weight in gold.
Join Matt and the millions of people protecting their homes with Ring. Learn more at ring.com.
The big Co-op price cut is here. We're lowering prices on hundreds of products across our stores. From Co-op 400-gram baked beans down from 40p to 32p. To Co-op 1.5-kilogram Mary's Piper potatoes down from £1.50 to £1.25. And Co-op 100-gram Fair Trade Rich Roast Coffee